So we are interested in the deep abiding peace that is the true essence nature, that every being is in truth silent peace, stillness, clarity, simplicity, openness. There's nothing that we have to do. There's nothing that we can do in order to know this truth, because we already are this truth. There's nothing that you can do to be who you already are, except just be who you already are and stop being who you think you are. Stop playing out the character and just actually be yourself. Be your true self. What we come to find is that the whole idea of the me, the mine, and the mind is a complete myth. That in truth there is nothing there. When we look for the me and the mind, the thoughts, we find nothing there. And so we are constantly invited to look, to discover, to actually inquire into what we assume is reality in order to find out that what we assume is reality doesn't exist in truth. That the story, the narrative, is a creation of the mind that is basically in conversation with itself. And in order to remember the true essence nature and be yourself, it is to stop telling the story, stop believing the story, stop indulging the story, and actually explore who is that one that believes the narrative. This is how we discover that there is no one there in the way that the mind imagines there is someone there, and that the mind itself does not exist. If we actually inquire to find out, what are these thoughts? What are they? What are thoughts? Without just moving in assumption and belief of thoughts, if we stop and we are still in still, true essence nature, we discover what thoughts actually are. And they are nothing. They are not a thing. They are not a truth. They are not reality. But we have to come to the stop, to be the awareness that can illuminate the thoughts. Every thought is a strategy. Every thought is a strategy that is keeping the sense of separation alive. And if we are called to know this truth and to live this truth, then we have to have the willingness to tell the truth and to actually explore what is the truth. To actually tell the truth of who we are is to be the being. To tell the truth about who we are is to not deny the true nature by telling the story of me and the mind and living in assumption. That there is this glorious freedom that is true nature. Every being already is the one being, the silent, still, simple being, the awake, aware being. And the call of the heart is to know this truth, to remember this truth. The mind imagines that there is something to do, that there is some way, some technique, something that you have to learn, something that you have to move through. But none of that is truth. All of that is strategy of the mind to keep itself in separation, to keep itself as a seeker. In this moment, we can just let it all go. To let it all go is just to be here, to actually be here, be yourself, be here, be no one. Don't believe the story. And if there are thoughts arising, it is to find out, what are those thoughts? What do you find? Part of the mind's imagining is that there is something to attain to, something that is, let's say, imagining that the glory is special. But the truth is that the glory couldn't be more ordinary, that we have to let go of all ideas of attaining to something, ascending to something better, bigger, awakening to something, getting enlightened in some way. Because the mind imagines that all of this is some kind of achievement of specialness. But the truth is, it's about being yourself. And to be yourself is to be utterly ordinary and simple. To be natural, to be yourself, naturally true and open, clear and simple. There's nothing to get. There's nothing to achieve. It is just about a willingness to be so honest and stop living in assumption, to let every moment be an illuminated inquiry in order to discover what is actually true here now, to discover the truth of the moment, and to be honest enough to live as this truth, to tell the truth to yourself and stop telling yourself a story, to stop telling the story of me. There's nothing to learn. There's nothing to achieve. The work that we speak of is the work to keep illuminating the moment, to keep meeting yourself just as you are, ordinary, open, clear, simple being, to meet yourself without your story, to meet yourself without believing the narrative, and to open to the possibility of illuminating that the narrative is nothing more than a cloud in the sky, that you are believing in is nothing more than a concept, a belief, and the willingness to question every belief, every concept, every idea, in order to discover there is no substance, no truth to any of it, in order to discover that the reality of who you are is quite simply awareness, awake, aware being. And the awake, aware being is the simple peace that we long for. But you already are this truth. You have never left yourself. You have never been away from yourself. You have always been this truth, and you are right now, this moment, you are. The feeling of being yourself is the feeling of being yourself that you've always had, exactly as you have always been, just without the narrative, without the story, and this discovery of like a freshness, a reality, an openness, a depth of clarity and presence of who you are, without the story, without believing a single thought, And we can only come to this remembering when we stop believing the thoughts and living in an imagined creation, like a projected world that the mind creates by thinking more thoughts and believing more thoughts and tangling itself into a whole conceptual illusion of limitation, when in truth you are completely unlimited. No one can do this for you. No one can give you this because you already are it, right? How could anything, anywhere, anyone give you what you already are? It would be impossible. Just as it is impossible to ever be separate from yourself, to ever be separate from the glory, from God, divinity, purity. It is just that all of these words can be so imagined and burdened by the mind with some idea of a utopian, blissful escape from suffering. And there is a release from suffering because it is discovered that suffering is just a thought. Suffering is the mind's resistance to what is. It is being within the limited context. But the freedom from that is the remembering who you are. It is not arriving at some kind of exalted, new experience of being a better you, a more holy you, a more pure and divine you, a more awakened, enlightened you. All of that is part of the myth. It's all part of the myth and what holds the me in this idea that there is some kind of special achievement, something special that is reserved for only certain beings. But the truth is that this ordinary being, this simple, natural, pure, divine being, is the simple truth of all beings. It's the true essence nature. It is the naturalness. And it is right here now. You are right here now. We spend the life in an imagined time capsule where we are locked in an idea of past, my story, my trauma, my life, where we are imagining a future where we will escape from the prison of my life that isn't the way I want it to be. And so we are never actually present as presence itself, because we are constantly either in like an attached memory of past, or we're in this imagined fantasy of a future where we are free, maybe a future where we are enlightened, a future where we know our true nature. But the truth is that you are one belief away from your true nature, and the belief is the one that you are not already living your true nature, right? That's the belief away from your true nature that you are. It's the one that you believe in. It's the one that you believe in that tells you that you are not. So it could be the belief, I am not awake. I am not one with God. I am not my natural being. I am not free. I am not that which sages speak of, right? Whatever belief it is, that is the one belief you are away. Explore that thought. Find out who you are without the thought. Who are you without the thought? I am not free. I am not awake. I am not worthy. Find out who you are without that thought, without believing that thought. And then, great glory, let it be so. Say, okay, I am not free. I am not awake. I am not worthy. Let it be okay. Let whatever the mind is creating as a belief be okay. Stop arguing with your own mind. I am not lovable. Okay. Be unlovable. It is to see the thoughts that are keeping you pulled away from yourself and to open, to stop arguing with the mind, stop creating layers of interception, right? These interceptors. I am not free, I am not worthy. Well, no, you're not because of this, la, 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 la. Well, actually you are, you're good, you're whole, you know? Just stop the whole conversation, right? Just for a moment. Stop the conversation and just be yourself. What does it take to stop? What is it that is needed to stop? The way that we stop the conversation is by stop layering on more thoughts, more narrative that's trying to engage, qualify, validate, acknowledge, affirm, right? It's that we illuminate that whole complex. To stop the conversation is to just be here as the presence of being. Be aware of the conversation. Be aware of the thoughts, the beliefs that are believed in. In a way, we have to stop the play of opposites, the play of comparison. So where you think you're bad, don't try to prove that you are good. Where you think you are wrong, don't try to prove that you are right. Where you are unworthy, don't try to prove that you are worthy, right? Because what we discover is the whole life lived, wasted in the mind is a life trying to prove you are the opposite of your deeply held core belief. You are not enough. Stop trying to prove that you are enough. You are unlovable. So stop trying to prove that you are lovable, right? Can you feel what we are pointing at? That the whole life becomes an attempt to validate your deep core belief. What about stopping that conversation and maybe just be, just for a moment? Let it be okay that you're unlovable, unworthy, rejected or abandoned by God, that you're wrong, there's something wrong with you, you're not enough. Let it be okay. What if, right? What if we stop trying to constantly prove that one thing we believe about ourselves, that we can prove that, because the only one you're trying to prove it to is yourself. What if you stop trying to prove yourself to yourself and find out just who you are without believing those thoughts, without trying to layer on another thought? Who are you? Who are you without continuing to perpetuate the cycle of separation, which is essentially this constant play of opposites trying to balance itself by being good enough, by being right, by being better, by getting what you want, right? If I just do this, then I'll, right? It's to see the mechanisms that are at play within your functioning and to stop playing out the mechanism that creates and perpetuates the imagined reality of any kind of separation, that we stop moving in the ways that perpetuates the belief in division and limitation, and that we open to naturally discover the unlimited simplicity of being. What is here that never goes anywhere? What is here that never moves and changes? What is here that is constant? What is here when you feel like you are at the end of what you can bear? What is not touched by the suffering, the struggle, the pain? What is never touched by the story, the narrative, the challenge, the intensity? What is it that is still here when you feel like you're at the end of the tether, right? What is it to be untethered? What is it to get to the end of the tether and to discover what has never, ever changed, what has never moved, and what remains when everything feels like it's upside down, inside out, and not going your way? What remains? This is where the discovery of who you are is. But we do not have to get to the end of the tether in struggle. It is just to stop telling the same story. Stop believing the belief that you are not. Discover what is the thought, what is the belief that keeps you divided, and be willing to challenge it. And the challenge to it is not about creating a mental conversation that tries to be the opposite of that, that balances it out. But the challenge to it is to stop trying to prove to yourself that you are something, when in truth you are nothing. You are no one, right? And when we say nothing, it's to say that you are not a thing. You are not a someone. You are not the story. You are not an object. And when we can just be aware of the object, multiple seeming objects, as the awareness that is free, we open to a pure subjectivity through realizing that if attention identifies with an object, it will believe itself to be that object, and it will play out that narrative. So it's only when we stop identifying with objects that we can come to a clear and open recognition. So to not identify with objects is to be the living light of awareness. to be the awareness of the objects, to be the presence that is present to the seeming, moving and changing field of objects, of content, of experience, right? And we start to see as the presence of awareness that so too is the me, the mind, the thoughts, the life, an object. What is it not to identify with the objects of experience and be free of object identification, to be the awareness that is just simply awake and aware? We could say aware of the objects, but deeper than that, awareness just right now in this moment, being aware. Where is awareness aware? Where is awareness? Where is the awareness that is aware? Does awareness go anywhere? Does awareness need to move in order to be aware? You see, awareness doesn't identify with the object to be aware of it. Awareness is just aware, and it's consistently just simply aware. The moving, changing are like clouds in a sky, and awareness is just aware. Awareness doesn't move. Awareness doesn't change into anything else. It stays as awareness. It remains unmoved, unchanged in the light of anything that seems to appear. Right? It's like a movie being projected, and the light is never touched. Doesn't matter what movie images are put in front of the light and what the projection looks like. The light never changes. The light never takes on the impression of the images. It makes a projection of the images, the filters, the patterns, right? But let's be really clear about this. What is the life? It's really just a series of pictures, right? It's a series of pictures, images. It's like patterns in the images, color, movement. What if we had no language for it? It's just images, just pictures, right? So we put these pictures, these images together with words, with language, and we give names to things, and we describe things. We create a narrative about it, and then we've got a movie. And we start believing in the movie, when in truth we are always the light. Now sometimes it can be spoken of that you are the screen, and what you are as the screen is the sense of your human experience, let's say, the sense of being here, that there's this movie being projected and you believe the movie and overlook the beingness. But in truth, you're the light. You're the light. And the light is moving through these filters and patterns and creating images, right? Just like where the sun moves through maybe leaves in a tree and it creates a print, like a shadow print. It's kind of like that in its most simple nature. But you see, we don't rest and explore what is me and my life. We just believe the story, the assumption that this is reality, my life, my story, my things, without actually exploring what actually is all of that. Is there any substance or reality to any of it? What is there reality to? And what we discover is the only reality is the felt sense of presence, the felt sense of being here, the felt sense of existence, the felt sense of just being. We could call this an I am presence, like the presence I am just here. Maybe this I am presence would be the screen onto which the images get projected. And then the imagining, I am the mind, I am the body, I am the story, this is my life. And so we have to have the willingness to explore. And the way that life plays is that it will often bring us to challenging situations in order to have us explore, but not always. It can be the longing to know freedom, to know the true nature, the longing to know love, to know happiness. But that longing only comes from what is already whole and happy and true and clear. We would not long for it if there was not already some sense of it. We would not long for it if we did not already know that it was possible. And that knowing of the possibility is because we already are this truth, this happiness, this simple, awake, aware being. And we are constantly overlooking the truth of who we are because we have learned to believe thoughts and to dwell in the past, creating a narrative about this moment based upon memory. So we're really only ever living in the past. We're living in a mind's capsule projected out of past experience. And past experience is what is known by the mind, right? So we're using the limited context, a limited set of images, a limited set of what's familiar, a limited set of words, a limited vocabulary, a totally limited context in order to label and evaluate this moment so that the me knows it and can frame it within a known context that feels safe, right? We don't generally meet this moment without that sense of limitation. But what is it to meet this moment without limiting the moment immediately by evaluating it, creating a narrative, and in a way confining it within this limited context of the personal me and how I see things? What is it to challenge that as the light, as the great light, the great illuminator that you are in truth? to be the light of awareness that illuminates and brings the possibility of not perpetuating the habitual practices and strategies of the me to just assume that you know something about this moment. What is it to meet this moment like a newborn? This moment like a newborn, to know nothing, to have no language, to be here totally free and open, where you can see the pictures, but you don't have labels for the pictures, the images. You're just seeing light dancing. In a way, you might be seeing color, but you don't know it even as color, right? Just to really feel into, what is it to meet this moment? So you can see light dancing. You know nothing about it. All you really know is the felt sense of your innocent presence, right? You don't know anything about any of this. You've got no past. You've got no imagined future. There's nothing behind you, nothing in front of you. There's just this moment. You can see light dancing, and all you know is the felt sense of being. This moment, alive, awake, fresh, being yourself. This is the truth of who you are. This is the truth of this moment. But we are so habituated to tell the story of this moment instead of telling the truth of this moment, right? It's not about what you tell to an apparent other, because what are those apparent others? They're just light dancing, right? They're just images. They're just moving patterns, ebbs and flows, right? You have no words. Is there any difference between a seeming other being? Because you don't even know what you look like, right? You're not seeing yourself. You can maybe see this, but this is just another picture, right? You can see this, but you don't know that another being that walks into the movie looks like you, right? You don't know anything until another being starts telling you, right? What do you know here now? What do you know to be truth in total innocence? If we really come to this moment open, and we can feel this simplicity and this innocence of who we are before the story, before we believe the story of my life, before we believe we are someone, and that the narrative that we hold and guard is true. And what if we are now to meet in this total innocence, that narrative, right? I am not enough. There's something wrong with me. What? Right? What is this innocence that you are in truth, this illuminated being that you are in truth, have to say about your story? Does it try to convince you? Of course not, because it only sees you as you are. It sees you as light dancing. It sees you as patterns of light, flows. Yes, moving, changing, but not making a problem of that. not wanting anything, right? Just this innocence that you are in this moment, this innocent being open, without believing a single thought. You can be aware of thoughts that are coming and going, but what is a thought? Here as this innocent being, what actually is a thought? Where do thoughts come from? Where do they go? Where does anything come from? And where does it go? What is the source of it all? What is it that is here, that is constant and known? Just the felt sense of presence, just your own sense of being. Is there any sense of division here in the innocence before words and story and narrative and belief and concept? Is there any sense of limitation here in the wide open light of being? There is no use or relevance in trying to put it right, to make the life right, to make the life better, to make the life different. It's this discovery that you're not that one that is striving. You're not that one that is flawed. You're not that one that is imperfect. You're not that one that is got a story about themselves. And so that is why we say, let the story just be here. Don't try to be proving yourself to be the opposite of what you are afraid is true about you. Because a life spent trying to prove yourself worthy, good enough, lovable, is a life wasted. When you can just discover that underneath that play of opposites, that you already are before all of that. This is the purity. This is the perfection. This is the simple divine being. And this is the naturalness, the ordinariness, the natural being that is before everything. And this is why, in truth, we are no thing. We are before things. We are before things that seem to qualify. We're before qualification. We're before it all. We are the wide open, expansive heart of light that just is. And it is to use the superpower of your illuminated presence to illuminate what you are not by having the willingness, the courage to challenge the assumption of the me and my life. Stop believing your story. Stop telling your story, because you are only telling your story to yourself. You're telling a story of misery, a story of sometimes good things, good experiences, a story of always trying to make more good experiences and have less bad experiences. But the truth is that whole cycle is a cycle of misery. The whole play of opposites is a cycle of misery, because it is a cycle of constantly being contracted and limited and trying and striving, of really trying to get away from yourself, where what we are inviting here is stop trying to get away from yourself. Meet yourself as you are. Let it surface, the core belief. I am not good enough. I am not worthy. I have done something wrong. Okay. Let it be okay. Stop putting yourself in the courtroom and trying to prove yourself innocent, when right here, there is this profound innocence where you have never been judged. The only judgment and imprisonment is within your own mind, within the own thought system. So free yourself right now by stopping telling the story. Stop believing the story. Have a willingness to stop and be completely outed, to reveal to yourself what you deeply fear about yourself. What do you deeply believe to be the great imperfection about yourself? And what if it is just to meet this? In presence, and just let it be here. Stop trying to prove that you're innocent and just be the innocence of this moment that shines the light upon both the sense of the victim and the perpetrator that is within the mind's mechanism. You are the one who has done something wrong, and you are the one who has done something wrong to you, to others, right? You're both victim and perpetrator in a world of duality. And if you are constantly, the safety, the place of safety is playing the victim. Of course, it's false safety. It's a false innocence. But to play the victim is the place that the mind feels more safe, because to play the perpetrator is deeply uncomfortable. But what if if within the mechanism of the mind that you're all of it, because you're telling your story, believing the story. It's the mind itself that is unkind to itself, that tells itself all of the things about itself. And when all of that is believed, it creates this whole narrative, an incredible tangle. And of course, it's tangled into the collective consciousness. It's constantly reflecting back its core beliefs. It's reflecting it back to you so that you can see through it, right? So that's why there's a repeating of tricky situations in the life. Keeps repeating with the opportunity to stop trying to prove yourself to yourself, basically. Stop telling the story and just be here. Be here for yourself. Be here with yourself. Be in utter presence. Actually be here, not in the past, not in the future. Actually be here and be willing to gaze into the light of your own innocence. Gaze into the light of the innocence of who you are before you imagined that you were someone. It is to stop, completely stop. Stop defending yourself. Stop explaining yourself. Just stop and be here. In the presence of being, we are in the presence of love. And in the presence of love, everything is welcome. There's nothing that you could bring forward that would be unwelcome. There's nothing that can stop love loving itself. And so it is this willingness to meet yourself, to be here with yourself, and to let surface whatever it is that creates limitation, whatever it is that creates a sense of me that is constantly strategizing. But we have to let go of all strategies. It is not the strategies of pain and suffering and hardship. It's also the strategies of it's so great, it's so blissful, it's so wonderful. We have to let go of all strategies, because any strategy is away from yourself. It's to be away from yourself. When we discover the true happiness, the true love, the true bliss, it's very ordinary. It's the naturalness. It's the peace. The natural, simple, awake being. This is the truth of who you are, of what we are. So it's to be here in this truth as the truth. Tell yourself the truth about this innocence and stop telling the story of lack, of something missing, of broken, flawed. Freedom is here when we stop believing that somehow something in the life has damaged us. Yes, there is this incredible process of refinement where we can meet everything and refine it, but we refine it by illuminating it and seeing through it, seeing that it doesn't actually define us, confine us in any way. There's not a single thought, a single story that holds us captive unless we believe it does. And the opportunity of this grace is to meet everything that seems to keep us captive and to free it into this wide open, expansive presence of love. We open out of time into the timeless, eternal. We open out of the sense of limitation to the infinite, unbounded being that we are. We remember the deep essence of the pure, awake awareness that we are. And we stop telling the story and keeping the sense of separation and division alive. Right here now, there is a peace, a simplicity, an innocence of being. And this is the true nature. It is your true nature. It is underneath the overlay of me and my story and all of the things that you imagine that you have to work through in order to be ready, to be worthy, to be pure enough. But all of that is nonsense. Those are the strategies that we are speaking of. And it's just to stop and to reveal, what are those strategies working towards? What are the beliefs that are underneath those strategies? And to just reveal, the strategy is, I have to work hard enough and prove myself that I am pure, that I am good. But what if you are goodness? What if you are good before you ever believed that you were bad? What if you are good that has no opposite? If you are so good, so pure, so innocent, that you have no opposite, that there is no opposite to this simple being that you are, and that we reveal the play of opposites, and we find out what is that story? What is that story made of? That we reveal the images, the pictures are dancing light. The words are just sounds. And what if we stop believing the way that we have learned to put together images and sounds and create a story of separation? What if we unravel the intelligence of the patterning and recognize that what is here in true essence is just light dancing with itself? That the essence nature of everything is light, is love. And what is love? Of course, love is very different to what the mind imagines love is. Love is openness. Love is the freedom where there is no division. Love is who you are before you imagined that you were divided in any way, limited in any way. Love is not something that you earn, that you have to get from somebody else. Love is not something that is like a currency. Love is your true nature. Love is the innocence. Love is the simplicity of just being here now. And so this is why we speak of this naturalness, this ordinariness. That all the ideas that the mind has are just part of the strategy to keep itself separate, to keep it at a distance, right? Because it imagines that it's somehow something that it has to prove itself worthy of. But there is no way that you prove yourself worthy to love, to divine love, to God. The only way you prove yourself worthy, if we could dare to say such a thing, is just to be here and to stop. You're not proving yourself worthy. You're just recognizing that never has been anyone that was unworthy. That through being here, there's a saying yes to this truth. There's a saying yes to this flow of divinity, this current. There's a saying yes to the truth of who you are. The presence of truth does not work with currency or bargaining. It sees through all strategy. So let it go. It has no value here. There's nothing to prove here. It is only the mind imagining that it has to prove itself to itself. And it will never, ever, within its limited context, come to a point of proving itself, to a point of recognizing wholeness, because it's programmed for limitation. We have to come to the recognition of that which is before the limitation, the unlimited truth, so that we stop moving within a limited program where we're trying to prove something that can never, ever be proven. And there's no point trying to prove it in the play of the time of a life, because right here now, you already are everything that you're trying to become, and more. So much more, right? No one can give this to you because it's not a journey. It's a recognition that there's only this one glorious light, love, self, being, whatever word we want to call it. And you are that. You are that right now. It is the letting go that just falls into a depthful knowing. This is the truth. This is the truth. This is the truth. And the truth, telling the truth to yourself, is to rest in the undoubtable aliveness of knowing, I am that. I am that. Until it is absolutely without any kind of question. But it's to rest in the spark of the alive recognition, and not imagine that you have all this work to do, or that there is anything in the world or in the mind that is going to help you get somewhere, that is just another strategy to keep yourself in separation. It's not about keeping the seeker alive. It's the willingness to let go of the seeker, to stop seeking, and actually be here, so fully present with yourself. That you are illuminated in the remembering of your innocence, of your simple purity, and that there's never, ever been anything that has taken this away from you. It does not matter how traumatic or intense the story of the life seems to be. Nothing has ever touched the innocence and purity of the true being that you are. And the knowing of this is not an opposite. It's not a different story. It's not a better story. And so this is why we want to stop trying to create different stories, better stories, because those are just strategies to keep the sense of separation and a deep held feeling of lack, which is the great misunderstanding, alive. We want to really see through this. This is always our focus. But the focus is laser sharp. We will be focusing all of our meetings on revealing and the inquiry that is necessary to stop telling the story. The mind can strategize and say, well, it's easy when I'm here, but it's hard when I'm by myself. The laser sharp focus will not leave a stone unturned. If you are willing, then the support is here. If you are willing, let us root out the strategies, the beliefs that keep the storytelling, the belief, and the narrative alive. Freedom is here right now. You have never left yourself. The grace of companionship and inquiry and support and guidance is that it holds you in presence, that it will not indulge the story. It's an invitation to see through what seems to keep you bound. Freedom is right here. It is to feel the sense of being underneath, before the story, to feel the freedom, to feel the joy, the openness, and the clarity that is here when you do not believe a single thought. And to confirm, freedom is here. There is no how-to, and there's nothing to grasp. Nothing to hang on to. Because it's ever present always here now, ever fresh. And it's to live this freshness. Live this freshness. Mm. It's a resonance, a simple resonance of being, where the recognition, where the remembrance is, and aliveness in the silence. And this is the knowing. The knowing knows. It's the innermost depths of the being. We could say it's where awareness is aware of itself, being aware. It's the source, and it's resonating with an aliveness. It knows itself, and it's alive in the knowing of itself. And in the alive knowing of itself, it's flowing as life itself. It flows as life itself without never leaving itself. Awareness only ever knows awareness. It never creates a story about anything. It flows as life. It appears as life without ever leaving itself. This is the true nature. It's to recognize, where does awareness know itself? Does awareness ever leave itself? Because it is in the awareness of awareness, being aware and knowing itself, knowing its essence nature, and that it never leaves itself, that the knowing of everything is in awareness itself. And this is how we open to recognize that the knowing is life, and that you are the knowing, you are the aliveness, but you never leave yourself. You never become anything. And this is how we start to recognize that everything that we think of as my life is just a movie, is just a play. We can only come to know this in the awareness of awareness, right? In the source awareness, the essence nature. It is to just notice where there can be this mental activity that imagines that it wants to come to freedom. It wants to know its true nature. It wants to be the being. It wants to know itself as love. Where the mind imagines that it's looking for an experience. And to see how all of that is strategy. That right here, aware of that, aware of those thoughts, the aware being already knows itself. To come to be aware of the thoughts. To see the activity of the moving changing that wants this experience, that imagines and believes that it is not already. Keeping the seeker alive, keeping the searching alive. It's to reveal that in the light of awareness and to stop searching in the way that the mind thinks it has to search and seek. To see it's another strategy, just reveal it. Stop the conversation and just illuminate. Just be here. And in just being here, when you stop that conversation, it's already here. This truth that is being sought after, it's already here.